I was a shy girl, the kind people barely noticed when they passed me in the hallways. I kept my head down, clutched my books close, and moved quietly through life, always too afraid to draw attention to myself. I didn't crave the spotlight the way others did. All I wanted was peace, the comfort of my favorite novels, music that could drown out the noise of the world, and one person I could trust more than anyone else, my best friend. She was everything I wasn't. Loud, confident, beautiful. People lit up when she entered a room. Teachers adored her enthusiasm, classmates whispered about her charm, and boys followed her with eager eyes. Compared to her, I was invisible. But that didn't bother me. I admired her. I thought we were perfect together, two halves of a whole, balancing each other out. Where I was quiet, she was bold. Where I hesitated, she leapt. And for years, I truly believed our bond was unbreakable. She was the one who knew everything about me. We spent late nights on the phone, whispering secrets we swore no one else would ever hear. We laughed about silly things, cried about painful things, and promised that no matter what happened, we would never betray each other. She wasn't just my best friend, she was my sister by choice. I would have done anything for her. I thought she felt the same. That's why I trusted her with my most fragile secret. There was a boy. He wasn't the most popular, but to me, he was everything. He had this quiet confidence, a smile that made my heart skip, and a kindness in his eyes that made me believe he was different from the rest. I watched him from afar for months, too scared to do more than exchange polite hellos. My feelings grew in silence, hidden inside notebooks where I'd scribble his name in the margins like a silly child. One evening, with my heart pounding and my cheeks burning, I told her. I told her about him. I told her how just the sound of his voice made me nervous, how seeing him laugh across the room felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I trusted her with those words because she was my best friend. She laughed softly, teased me in that playful way only she could, and told me not to be so scared. She said I was beautiful in my own way. She told me maybe one day, I should tell him how I felt. For the first time, I felt a spark of courage. Maybe I could. Maybe, with her by my side, I wasn't as invisible as I thought. But I was wrong. The first time I noticed something strange was when I walked into school and felt people staring. At first, I thought I had something on my face or maybe my clothes looked weird. Then I heard it, the whispers. Quiet at first, but unmistakable. People were laughing about me. About him. About us. My secret, the one I had only ever told her, was everywhere. The next few days were torture. Every hallway echoed with giggles. Every classroom felt heavier with eyes on me. Notes appeared in my bag, mocking my feelings. They called me desperate. They said I was pathetic for even thinking I could have a chance with him. And the worst part? He knew. He heard the rumors. And when I looked at him, expecting maybe kindness, maybe even just silence, all I saw was pity. That hurt more than laughter. At first, I couldn't believe she had told anyone. I defended her in my mind. I told myself someone must have overheard, or maybe I had slipped somehow. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. It all traced back to her. The girl I trusted most in this world was the one who spread my secret. She was the one laughing the loudest. She was the one who twisted my innocent crush into a cruel joke for everyone else to enjoy. And just when I thought I couldn't break any further, I saw it with my own eyes. She was holding his hand. My best friend and the boy I had fallen for. Smiling, laughing, looking at each other as if they had been together all along. My heart stopped in that moment. My chest felt like it caved in. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't understand how everything I loved, everything I trusted, could turn against me so completely. The girl I considered my sister had stolen the boy I liked, and in the process, she had taken my dignity with her. I tried to confront her. I needed answers, needed her to tell me this wasn't what it looked like. But when I finally asked, she didn't even try to deny it. She smirked. She shrugged. And then she said the words that would haunt me forever. She told me I should have known better. That girls like me, quiet, plain, invisible, should know their place. That no boy would ever pick me when someone like her was standing next to me. She laughed while she said it, and I felt something inside me shatter. After that, I wasn't just betrayed. I was destroyed. The whispers grew louder. The laughter sharper. I became the outcast, the joke, the girl who was humiliated by her own best friend. People who once smiled at me now turned their backs. I ate lunch alone, walked alone, lived alone even in a crowded school. Teachers looked at me with pity, but their sympathy did nothing to dull the pain. I cried into my pillow every night, wishing I could disappear, wishing I had never trusted her, wishing I had never spoken my secret aloud. But in the middle of that pain, something inside me shifted. I don't know when it happened. Maybe during one of those nights when the tears just wouldn't stop. Maybe when I saw them together again, laughing like I didn't even exist. Maybe when I realized the whole world was against me. But somewhere in that storm of humiliation and heartbreak, a tiny spark lit up inside me. I realized I couldn't let this destroy me. I couldn't let her betrayal be the final chapter of my story. If she wanted me to believe I was weak, I would prove her wrong. If she wanted me to disappear, I would rise so high she would never escape my shadow. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when. But I made myself a promise that night. Never again. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would stay small, silent, and invisible. But what they didn't know was that they had given me the very reason to fight. One day, they would see me again. And when they did, I wouldn't be the shy girl they mocked. I would be someone unstoppable. After that betrayal, my world collapsed piece by piece. I had always been quiet, but now my silence became a shield, a wall I hid behind because I no longer trusted anyone. I started sitting in the farthest corners of classrooms, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I felt like every pair of eyes held judgment, like every whisper carried my name. It wasn't paranoia, it was reality. People really were laughing at me. They looked at me like I was a fool who dared to dream above her place. Lunch breaks became the hardest part of the day. I used to sit with her, laughing, sharing snacks, making silly jokes. Now, I sat alone, pushing food around on my tray, pretending I wasn't hungry so no one would notice how alone I was. I could hear them behind me, snickering, sometimes even loud enough for me to catch their cruel words. There she is, the desperate one. Can you believe she thought she had a chance? They didn't even whisper anymore. They didn't need to. I had no one to defend me, no one to silence them. Every day felt like walking through fire, and I didn't know how much more I could endure. My grades, once my safety net, began to slip. I couldn't focus on textbooks when my mind kept replaying the betrayal. I couldn't write essays when my chest ached with humiliation. Even teachers, who once praised my work, started pulling me aside, asking if I was okay. I would force a smile and say yes, but inside, I was screaming. At home, things weren't much better. My parents noticed something was wrong. They saw the dark circles under my eyes, the forced smiles, the way I locked myself in my room for hours. They asked questions, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. How could I? How could I explain that the girl they had welcomed into our home, the girl they believed was my closest friend, had turned my life into a nightmare? Instead, I told them I was just stressed, just tired, just overwhelmed with school. They believed me, or maybe they just wanted to believe me. Either way, my silence became another weight pressing down on me. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, and replay everything in my mind. The laughter, the stares, the cruel words. The image of her holding his hand burned itself into my memory. I cried until my body ached, until my chest hurt from sobbing so hard. And in those darkest moments, I questioned everything about myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really was too plain, too invisible, too unworthy of love. Maybe I had been foolish to believe anyone could ever choose me. There were times when the pain became unbearable, when I thought I couldn't take another day of being mocked and pitted. I wanted to disappear, to vanish so no one could ever laugh at me again. I felt like my kindness had been my downfall, that my trust had been my greatest mistake. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the tears and shame, a small voice whispered to me. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. It said, "This isn't the end. Not yet." At first, I ignored it. What strength could I possibly have left? But the more the world pushed me down, the more that voice refused to fade. And slowly, I began to listen. I realized I couldn't change the past. I couldn't undo the betrayal. I couldn't silence the whispers or erase the humiliation. But I could decide what I would do with it. I could let it bury me forever, or I could use it as fuel. If they thought I was weak, I would show them strength they couldn't imagine. If they thought I was invisible, I would become someone they couldn't ignore. The first step was small. I picked up my books again. At first, it was just a distraction, something to take my mind off the pain. But soon, it became more. Every page I turned, every problem I solved, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I studied late into the night, forcing myself to focus even when my eyes blurred with exhaustion. Slowly, my grades began to rise again. It wasn't easy. Nothing about it was easy. But each small victory gave me strength. The second step was harder. I started running in the mornings, long before the sun came up. At first, my body screamed in protest, my lungs burned, and my legs begged me to stop. But I kept going. Every drop of sweat felt like washing away a piece of the humiliation. Every mile I ran reminded me that I was stronger than I thought. Little by little, I built discipline. My body grew stronger, and so did my mind. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I didn't post about it, didn't brag, didn't seek validation. I was building myself in silence, away from the eyes that once mocked me. While they laughed, I worked. While they gossiped, I focused. And while she paraded around with her stolen prize, I laid the foundation for something greater. Of course, the whispers didn't stop right away. The bullying didn't vanish. People still looked at me like I was nothing. But instead of breaking me, their cruelty hardened my resolve. I stopped reacting. I stopped letting their words control me. The more I ignored them, the more powerless they became. I started noticing small changes in myself. My back stood straighter. My eyes no longer darted to the ground. My voice, though still quiet, carried more weight when I spoke. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely powerless. But I wasn't ready to reveal this to the world. Not yet. I needed more time, more strength, more victories before I could face them again. I knew that one day, I would. One day, I would return not as the broken, humiliated girl they thought they had destroyed, but as someone they could never forget. And deep down, I wanted her to see it most of all. The friend who betrayed me. The girl who laughed at my pain. The one who told me I would never be enough. I wanted her to see me rise. I wanted her to choke on the sight of everything I became without her. For now, I was still rebuilding. Still struggling. Still fighting tears on some nights. But something had changed. I was no longer waiting for someone to save me. I was saving myself. They thought they had ended my story. But in truth, they had only written the first painful chapter. What came next would be mine to decide. And I promised myself that the girl they had mocked, the girl they had broken, would return stronger than they could ever imagine. I had spent months drowning in shame, but something inside me began to shift. The pain didn't disappear, it was still there, heavy and raw, but instead of suffocating me, I started to use it. It became my fuel, my fire, my reason to get up every morning when all I wanted was to stay in bed. I realized that if I let the betrayal define me, then they had won. And I couldn't let that happen. So I threw myself into change. It started with my studies. I had always been a good student, but after the betrayal, I had slipped, letting my grades suffer. I decided that would never happen again. Every night, I sat at my desk long after everyone else had gone to sleep. While others wasted time gossiping or scrolling endlessly, I memorized pages, solved problems, and pushed my mind to its limits. Each test I aced felt like taking back a piece of myself. But I wanted more than academic success. I wanted to rebuild every part of myself. That's when I began pushing my body as hard as my mind. I ran every morning, no matter how cold the air or how much my muscles ached. At first, I could barely manage a mile. But I kept going, until my body grew stronger and my stamina increased. Running turned into weight training, training turned into sports. I joined a team quietly, nervous they would laugh, but I worked harder than anyone else. Slowly, my coaches began to notice me. Teammates who had once ignored me started to respect me. My body transformed, but so did my spirit. As my body grew stronger, so did my confidence. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to look people in the eyes. I walked with my head up, my shoulders back. At first it felt uncomfortable, but I realized something: the more I carried myself with confidence, the less people mocked me. Their whispers faded. Their laughter stopped. What surprised me most was how some began to treat me differently. Teachers praised my persistence. Students who had once laughed asked for help with assignments. Teammates congratulated me after games. It wasn't everyone, but slowly, I saw the shift. They weren't laughing anymore, they were watching. And though I would never admit it out loud, a part of me wanted her to notice too. My ex-best friend. The girl who betrayed me. She still walked the halls like she owned them, but I could see the cracks. The boy she had stolen wasn't always by her side. Their smiles didn't seem genuine. Sometimes, I caught her watching me, not with pride, but with jealousy. Maybe even fear. And every time our eyes met, I made sure not to look away. Years passed, and the transformation only grew. In high school, I was the girl they laughed at. But in college, I became someone else entirely. The hours of studying, the training, the discipline, it all paid off. I earned scholarships, awards, recognition I never imagined. I walked into classrooms no longer invisible, but as someone people respected. College gave me a fresh start. A place where no one knew my past, where no one whispered about betrayal or humiliation. And I used that chance to redefine myself. I built new friendships, real ones this time, with people who valued honesty and loyalty. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. For the first time, I understood what true friendship meant. And I promised myself I would never again give my trust so blindly to someone who didn't deserve it. But I didn't forget. I never forgot. The memory of that betrayal lived inside me, not as a wound anymore, but as a scar, a reminder of what I had survived. I carried it with me, not as a weakness, but as proof of my strength. My success didn't happen overnight. It was years of blood, sweat, and silent battles no one else saw. But eventually, it became undeniable. I was no longer the girl at the back of the classroom, the one who blended into the shadows. I was the one at the top of the list, the one walking across the stage for awards, the one whose name people remembered. And yet, even with all that success, there was still a part of me that longed for the moment. The moment when fate would bring me face to face with her. The friend who had once told me I would never be enough. I didn't want her forgiveness. I didn't even want her apology. What I wanted was for her to see what I had become. For her to know that the girl she tried to destroy had risen higher than she could ever imagine. That day came sooner than I expected. It was at a reunion, years after high school. I had grown into myself completely by then, confident, accomplished, respected. Walking into that room, I felt something I had never felt before. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't afraid. For once in my life, I felt like I belonged. And when I saw her across the room, it was as if time froze. She didn't look the same anymore. The arrogance she once wore like armor had faded. The boy she had stolen was no longer by her side. Her smile seemed forced, her eyes tired. She didn't look like the untouchable girl I remembered. She looked ordinary. And when her eyes met mine, I saw it clearly. The recognition. The disbelief. The realization of who I had become. In that moment, I knew the tables had turned. When I walked into that room, I could feel her eyes on me before I even looked in her direction. The girl who once broke me with lies and betrayal stood frozen, staring at the version of me she never expected to see. I wasn't the shy, naive girl anymore. I wasn't the outcast hiding from whispers. I was strong, confident, and unshakable. She forced a smile, her words faltering as she said, "You've really changed." But I could hear the fear in her voice. "Yes," I said calmly. "I had no choice but to rebuild myself." She tried to laugh it off, claiming it was just high school drama, a silly mistake of the past. But it wasn't silly to me. It nearly destroyed me. And for the first time, I realized she still didn't understand the damage she had caused. I looked at her, steady and unflinching. It wasn't just drama. It was my life. You spread lies. You betrayed me. You left me to drown while you stood by and watched. That doesn't go away with regret. She panicked, stammering excuses, saying she never meant for it to go that far, that she regretted it. But regret couldn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep. Regret couldn't erase the shame of being laughed at. Regret couldn't give back the years I spent rebuilding what she destroyed. And then I made my choice. I didn't need to scream or create a scene. I let my truth speak louder than any anger. With people around us listening, I said clearly, "The lies you told almost ruined me, but they didn't. I survived. I rebuilt. And I succeeded despite you." Her face turned pale. The same people who once believed her lies now saw the truth in my words. She tried to deny it, but her denial only made her look smaller. I leaned closer and whispered, "This is your punishment. Not revenge in the way you expect, but seeing me thrive despite what you did, and knowing you couldn't stop me." And then I walked away. I didn't look back. In the following days, I learned about her life. The boy she betrayed me for was gone. Her friendships had faded. Her path was filled with regret and disappointment. She was left with nothing but her past mistakes, while I carried a future filled with possibilities. My career grew. My circle of friends became loyal and supportive. My confidence was unshakable. I no longer doubted my worth. I no longer needed her approval. I no longer carried the weight of her betrayal. Sometimes, I thought of her, not with hatred, but with closure. Because the truth was, I didn't need to destroy her. She had already destroyed herself through her choices. All I had to do was rise. That was my real revenge. Not watching her fall, but proving I could stand taller than she ever imagined. Not caring about her apology, but knowing I no longer needed it. She no longer had power over me. I had taken back everything she tried to steal, and more. I was broken once. But now, I am unstoppable. If you felt my journey from betrayal to strength, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more powerful revenge stories that inspire unstoppable strength.